Chemical Industries Limited, a large company, many successful products, a leader in the chemical industry. Turnover is over 300 crore rupees. The company has always been on the lookout for new projects. While looking for new areas for diversification, Mr. Jhunjhunwala, the Executive Director, is presently wondering if it is worthwhile to enter into manufacturing synthetic fibers. He has asked Anurag to get some details on the market for synthetic fibers.
Hello, Anurag. Come and sit down.
Let's see what all he has to offer, Mr. Jhunjhunwala, for forecasting demand of synthetic fibers.
Tell me, what have you got on the synthetic fibers market so far?
Well, sir, I have gathered some information on this. The synthetic fiber market entered in quite appreciable quantities into the Indian market in the late 1970s. And presently, the total consumption of this is approximately 4 lakh tons. But the consumption of cotton has been more or less stagnant over this period. Thus, all the increase in demand has been taken basically by synthetic fibers.
I see. What are the imports?
Well, presently the imports of synthetic fibers, as per my figures over here, are 21,000 tons. But over these years, the imports have also been showing a rising trend. I read a recent article which had said that, the synthetic fibers are basically a seller's market. And recently they have increased the prices.
The manufacturers are making good profits because the customers still want their products. And this is mainly because of the high customs duties on imported fiber. You know, Anurag, one of the main reasons for the success of Reliance Industries is their timely entry in the synthetic fibers market. And do you know, Anurag, there are many other companies trying to enter this market at the same time?
Yes, sir. I have also collected some details about this. According to my details, the government has issued approximately 20 licenses to various companies for manufacturing of synthetic fibers.
Which means a good competition in the future. Okay, Anurag, have you done something about the likely demand? Have you prepared some chart or graph or something?
So I've plotted the consumption of synthetic fibers in the last few years. And with this graph, it becomes amply clear that the demand has been rising quite rapidly. I've also calculated the annual growth rate of consumption of synthetic fibers, which works out to approximately 18.2%. Now here I'm assuming that the annual growth rate in consumption will remain the same over a period of time, and the demand of these fibers will work out to 9,80,000 tons.
No, Anurag, no. You cannot use trend analysis for synthetic fibers. Trend analysis is used only when there is long historical data and the projection is into comparatively nearer future. What you have is 7 to 8 years historical data, and you are trying to project it into 7 to 8 years in the future. Also, you know the concept of product life cycle. Now, every product has different growth rates in different phases of its life. So it's not right to assume similar growth rate, especially when you're forecasting 7 to 8 years. Also, Anurag, thirdly, many industrial products, in spite of their superior properties, face very heavy resistance in the market, as their use necessitates changes in the equipment required to process them. Once this resistance is overcome, the demand grows at a very high rate.
Yes, sir, but I have also read another report published by the Government of India. And in this report, the committee has estimated demand for synthetic fibers and petrochemicals till approximately 2080. And the demand estimates as per this committee work out to be about 7.5 lakh tons in 1995. And I've also read somewhere that the government has accepted most of the recommendations of this committee.
I'm aware of this report. But Anurag, the government estimates are normative in approach. The government feels that the demand should be such and such, but it doesn't happen that way. The government can change policies, it can regulate licenses, change duties, but still in many cases, the demand targets are not achieved. In many cases, they're not achieved. You know, one government report said that the demand for paper in this country would grow at a very high rate, and a number of companies set up paper mills, but the demand didn't materialize for whatever reason. And now, a number of paper mills are sick. And this is not just paper. It's happening in many cases. Pesticides, woven sacks, many more.
But sir, the government is using this report for framing policy.
It is good to be aware of such reports, but these at best can provide a lead. I would not like to base my investment decision merely on a government report, which is done for a different reason anyway. After all, if we decide to go in for this project, it is an investment of 60 to 70 crores. I would like a detailed study done for this purpose. And you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking to call in an expert who will do a systematic study or to forecast the demand for synthetic fibers. What do you say?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, sir, because I also feel that the data we have is quite limited, and a systematic study can give us reliable results.
I think I will call in Mr. Arun Nath and ask him to do this for us. Hello, Ruby, please get me Mr. Arun Nath. Yes, Mr. Nath. How are you, Mr. Nath? What are you doing now there? Acha, that's very interesting. Mr. Nath, I was wondering if I could request you to come in with us on the synthetic fibers. I need somebody to do a detailed study on the forecast of demand. It's a very interesting job. Yes. Okay, Mr. Nath. I'm looking forward to meeting you and see you on Wednesday at 10 a.m. in my office, right? Bye-bye. Anurag. Mr. Arun Nath is coming to our office on Wednesday at 10 o'clock. Let's discuss this issue with him.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Nath is an independent market analyst. He helps industries to analyze and reach a decision for their market estimation. Let us say why Mr. Nath undertakes demand forecasting for synthetic fibers.
So I think with Mr. Nath helping us, we might be able to achieve. Oh, hello, Mr. Nath.
How do you do, Mr. Managerial?
Just sit down. I must say you're very punctual.
Thank you.
This is Mr. Anurag. He is helping me with the synthetic fibers.
Good to see you, Anurag. Well, what can I do for you, Mr. Managerial?
The first thing you can do for me is to let me know what you prefer. Tea or coffee?
Oh, tea would be fine with me, thank you.
What would you, Anurag? Ruby, please send 3 teas over. And no calls, please, unless emergency. Thank you. Right, Mr. Nath. Anurag here has collected some data on the synthetic fibers market. He feels that the demand has grown at a very fast rate in the last few years. And as you know, there has been a considerable amount of imports on fibers. He also has details of companies that are trying to enter this market. So there's going to be good competition. I was wondering if you could help us in getting some idea of this demand in the future.
Mr. Nath, I tried trend analysis for demand forecasting, but unfortunately, due to the limited data available, we couldn't arrive on any reliable estimate.
Yes, trend analysis cannot be used for the demand forecasting of synthetic fibers. However, there are several other methods of demand forecasting. For example, end-use method, regression analysis, the chain ratio method, or perhaps even the Delphi technique. We should be able to select from one of these methods as an appropriate one.
Okay, now from all the techniques you just listed out, which one would you recommend?
Well, you're interested in the forecast for the next 7 to 8 years, but the existing data on synthetic fibers is very limited. So a direct analysis would be meaningless here.
So how do you suggest we go about it?
Well, we know demand for synthetic and natural fibers should be equal to the total textile demand. What I would suggest is that you first determine demand for textiles or cloth and then the demand for natural fiber. For both of these, sufficient data is available. The demand for synthetic fibers can then be worked out indirectly, which would be equal to the demand for cloth less the natural fibers demand. I think the method of regression analysis is called for here.
But Mr. Nath, cannot the Delphi technique be used over here?
The Delphi technique calls for collecting information from experts in a number of iterations.
Okay.
This method is generally used when a clear expert group is available. For example, if you were to estimate the demand for Vanaspati in Delhi, you could speak to a group of wholesalers in Kharibali who represent more than 90% of this trade. Now this group is an expert group, and thus the Delphi technique could be employed. In the case of synthetic fibers, on the other hand, there is a very high level of diversity in each type of fiber, like polyester, nylon, acrylic, or polypropylene. It is extremely difficult to define the expert groups with a good, clear understanding of all of these fibers. Also, Anurag, you cannot check the statistical reliability of an estimate using this method.
What about the end-use method then?
The end-use method is ideally suited for industrial products like steel or hydrochloric acid or perhaps cement, where a large proportion of the consumption is restricted to some 4 or 5 end users only. On the other hand, the end use for synthetic fibers is very diverse. You know that synthetic fibers find applications in areas like saris, suitings, shirtings, and other apparel. Then there are household products like carpets, bed sheets, tapestries, and others. The user industry is also very diverse. Some synthetic fibers need not be processed in spinning mills. Others need different types of machines for weaving and processing. To add to this complexity, there is an intense competition within different types of synthetic fibers.
I guess you're right, Mr. Nath. Even I think end-use method is going to be very complicated without any improvement in the reliability of these estimates. But I do think that the end-use method will be more appropriate for demand forecasting of a specific type of fiber, because this takes into account the inter-fiber competition.
Further, the chain ratio method would be more suited to products like, say, toothpaste, where you assess the proportion of the population using the product and the per capita consumption for the purposes of market estimation. You cannot use this for synthetic fibers. For your requirement, Mr. Jhunjhunwala, I would recommend the regression method.
Now, how do you propose to go ahead with this?
Well, for that I would like to work out a detailed methodology.
If I may suggest, Mr. Nath, why don't you take Mr. Anurag with you? Maybe you can jointly work out something.
That's an excellent idea. Perhaps I could get him to come to my office.
That's great. Then I should expect a reliable estimate from the both of you?
Yes.
Mr. Nath and Anurag are going to work out a methodology for demand forecasting for synthetic fibers based on regression analysis. Let us see what are the factors one has to take into account before actually calculating estimates.
Anurag, we want to estimate two things. A, the total demand for cloth, and B, the demand or availability for the natural fibers.
Okay.
Let us measure both of these one by one. Now, regression analysis calls for the identification of both the dependent as well as the independent variables. Let us try and finalize on the dependent variable first.
Mr. Nath, over here, won't the demand of cloth be the dependent variable?
Yes, but in terms of what? You know we are estimating the total future demand for synthetic fibers in terms of tonnage, right? But the past data in terms of tonnage is not available. This tonnage of fiber demand is a multiple of per capita cloth consumption in meters, population level, and the average conversion factor from meters to tons. The estimate of likely population level can be obtained from various sources. So let us select the dependent variable to be the per capita cloth demand in meters.
Mr. Nath, don't you think that the demand for any product would be dependent on a lot of factors, like the price of the product or the consumer's purchasing power? or at the same point of time the price of competing products. And I think we should take another thing into consideration, that the fact that in the northern part of the country the winters are much more severe, so there the demand for cloth would be much more. And at the same point of time in the rural and urban areas, like in the urban areas the clothes are tighter, while in the rural areas the clothes are much, like loose, like kurta or dhoti and things like that.
Yes, you're right, Anurag. An independent variable should be chosen so that besides directly influencing the dependent variable, it should also have enough past data. Also, you should be able to forecast it independently. Now, keeping these criteria in mind, which other independent variables would you like to choose? Any other variable which you think would influence demand?
Mr. Nod, let's take the example of a laborer or an unskilled worker. Now, he buys cloth for its utility value, not for its glamour value at all. At the same point of time, he has, 2 or 3 sets of clothes. Now, he's going to buy a new set only once the older set has, lived off its utility value. And so, don't we have to take into consideration the fact that he would be having a certain amount of stock as well?
Right. The concept of stock versus flow is more applicable to durable goods like automobiles or television, where the future demand is dependent on the existing stock of these goods with the consumer. Cloth in this case cannot be considered a durable good.
But isn't cloth a durable good as well? Because the life of cloth doesn't end after using it the first time.
Yes, I agree with you there. The position of cloth is somewhere between durable and non-durable. Let's say semi-durable. I think we should try to capture the effect of the semi-durable nature of cloth by building some kind of durability index. An index in which durable cloth bought during the previous year may be used as an independent variable.
This is not very clear to me.
Your polyester shirt is much more durable than your cotton shirt, right?
Okay.
Now consider the average consumer. If he buys a polyester shirt this year or season, the probability of his buying another shirt in the next season is quite low.
Okay.
But if he were to buy a cotton shirt, there is a very high probability that he will have to purchase another shirt in the next season.
Agreed.
This difference is what I am trying to capture by using the durability index. The proportion of consumption of synthetic fibers which are durable in the previous season would affect the demand.
Yeah, I guess that would be quite appropriate.
Okay, Anurag. Now we have the following independent variables: consumer income or purchasing power, the price of the cloth, the price of other competing goods, urbanization, population in areas facing severe winters, and the durability of the cloth. Any other independent variable you can think of?
I think that takes care of them all.
How would you go about quantifying all these variables?
Well, as regards to purchasing power, there are a number of statistics published by the government. Maybe you could use some of these.
Yes, the Reserve Bank of India publishes an estimate of the per capita private final consumption at constant prices. The Planning Commission also has worked out the future projections for this variable, which gives us the data for both the past and the future. This variable represents that portion of the disposable income which is actually used to purchase various goods. The unit for this would obviously be rupees.
Yes, I guess that could be used as consumer income. But I've also seen some reports published by the Textile Commissioner, Government of India, where we have the average textile price over a number of years. Maybe we could use that also as part of analysis.
Yeah.
But one thing that has really intrigued me is that when one would expect with prices increasing, textile demand should have dropped. But actually what is happening is both price and demand have been increasing.
Yes, Anurag. That is a very important point whenever you are using time series data in a regression analysis. The price and value should be taken at constant rupee level, which means you have to remove the effect of inflation.
Okay.
Now, if you divide the textile price with the consumer price index, you would get the real price. All right. And this real price would be negatively correlated with the demand. The unit for price would be rupees per meter.
Okay, now what about the competing products to cloth?
Take the average consumer. What are his priorities? Roti, kapda or makan?
Exactly.
Now, the food always occupies the first position in his list of priorities.
Yeah.
If the price of food goes up, he has less money to spend on clothes. Therefore, food price affects the demand for cloth.
So you see, Mr. Nath and Anurag are working out dependent variables and independent variables for regression analysis for forecasting demand of cloth. While considering all the pros and cons of various variables, they have decided on the dependent and independent variables. While they set course to collect data available for the last 25 years on these variables, let me explain them to you. Here, cloth represents demand. Variable income represents purchasing power of the consumers. As you see here, this variable would be expected to have positive correlation. The average textile price has been deflated with consumer price index to remove effective inflation. As food products compete with textiles, the food price index is also included as an independent variable. This would have a negative correlation. Here, DRB means durability index. This variable has been considered to reflect the semi-durable nature of cloth. Urbanization factor has been represented through this variable. Similarly, this variable represents the effect of winters on cloth demand. A combination of two variables, income and food, has been chosen as it represents the number of total food units that can be purchased by the consumers. Similarly, a combination of variables income and price has also been chosen as it represents the number of total cloth units that can be purchased by the consumers. So we have one dependent variable, that is cloth, and 8 independent variables, that is income, price, food, durability index, urban, winter, and 2 combination variables of income with food and income with price. On the basis of collected data, they have obtained the correlation coefficients. Let us try to interpret these variables. While income should be positively correlated, the correlation coefficient shows an illogical sign. So, this variable is dropped here. The data shows an expected correlation. Thus, these variables are being selected for further analysis. This variable shows very low correlation, so let's drop this variable too. So finally, we are left with 6 independent variables. Mr. Nath has run different regression equations with each of these variables. The equation meets all the statistical parameters of goodness of fit. Thus, the variable price has been selected for further analysis. Similarly, food has also been selected. You see here the coefficient of determination is too low. This means durability does not have significant effects on demand. Therefore, this variable has been dropped. As you see, the standard error of regression coefficient is even higher than the coefficient itself. Urban has been dropped from further analysis. INFD is also considered for further analysis. This equation meets all the statistical criteria, and so INPR is also being considered for further analysis. Now only 4 variables have been left. They are running regression equations in various combinations. And they have derived the predictor equation. Substituting the estimates of independent variables in the predictor equation, they have obtained the estimates of demand for cloth or textile fibers. Now they continue their analysis to obtain the projections for natural fibers. Let us see how Mr. Jhunjhunwala reacts to this demand forecast exercise.
Yes, Mr. Nath, I believe you have completed your demand forecasting exercise.
Yes. So we had run the regression analysis to obtain the demand for all textile fibers as well as the demand for natural fibers. Now the difference between the two would give us the demand for synthetic fibers. Now if you take a look over here, the demand for synthetic fibers works out to approximately 8.75 lakh tons in 1995.
Yeah, just a minute. Before we jump on his results, I would be interested in knowing how exactly did you arrive upon this?
Well, Mr. Jhunjhunwala, I would like to explain.
While Mr. Arun Nath and Anurag explain the methodology to Mr. Jhunjhunwala, let us also discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the regression analysis technique. Here you see, friends, is the limitation of regression technique. The export of textile fibers, including ready-made garments and yarn, in significant quantities have started only recently. But the regression technique is not able to reflect this recent change. The technique is not able to capture the effect of current competition as well. However, it would not be feasible to estimate export demand using any statistical technique, as the volume of exports greatly depends on the export incentives offered by the government and international prices. We have seen and discussed various methods of demand forecasting, but regression analysis technique was chosen for estimating the demand for textiles and synthetic fibers because of the desired long-term forecasts as well as its other advantages. The choice of a demand forecasting technique has to be made after considering the data availability, type of product, period of forecast, and time, and budget available. Many times, more than one technique may be used to cross-check the forecast. It is fun forecasting demand, isn't it? Why don't you try forecasting demand of some other product using the appropriate technique?